Good evening, everybody. It's Thursday. It's Thursday, and there's nobody in the chat to begin the game. Ah, concupiscence. Nernaeth. Nernaeth. I was about to say, no one's here, even here in the chat, waiting for me to call me late by 2 minutes. Good evening. Welcome to the program. My name is Stuart Davis. I am a flawed man of God. I am a deacon at a small church just outside of Richmond, Virginia. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a biblical scholar, and I haven't been to seminary. I'm not trying to get you to join my church or donate to any special cause. What the purpose of this program is to talk about God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, the Bible, Christianity, you, me, relationship with God. If you are interested at all in starting a relationship with God, and learning more about Jesus, maybe you think there's more to this existence than just what you experience here on Earth. Welcome to the show. Glad you are here. Maybe you can get some sort of insight from me. I've been a Christian all my life, 39 years, non-denominational Protestant. Don't subscribe to any particular doctrine or denomination, just in the Word, daily trying to be better than myself, not better than anybody else, just be better than myself. Get that relationship to God closer. So if you like what you see, hopefully it acts as a very amateur primer to Christianity that springboards you into a relationship with God. If you are already a Christian and you just enjoy Christian topics and discussions and being part of the chat, welcome as well. We've got a great chat group of folks in the chat that are all constantly adding their perspective and opinions and questions to the mix. Would love to have you in there as well. Be part of that. Be part of that group, whether you are new to the faith, been in the faith a while, or just interested in learning more. Would love to have you in there. We act very much similar to a Wednesday night study group or a Sunday school in the way that we interact, at least in my interactions in a Sunday school. So there you have it. Either way, no matter how you're entering this channel, if you are interested at all in seeing more, if you want to support the channel, please like this episode, like whatever episodes you go through, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to make sure you're getting updates regularly, and also share it with anybody you think might be interested in watching this as well. So I also have a locals channel locals page that is in the description, and you can follow that to get to the Discord, and you can have more interactions than just this nightly togetherness fellowship that we have. And love to have you in any capacity possible. So this is your official welcome. So how is everybody doing? Nernaeth is here, and Dresden is here as well. First to say first, because Nernaeth was focused mostly on pointing out correctly that I was late. Look, I was stuck in scroll mode. I just sent out a tweet, and I was just checking, and I was like, wait a minute, what time is it? Oh, it's 8 o'clock. Gotta get set up the camera real quick, put on the headset and the mic, and then went to turn on the lights. And the top ones need to be charged. So we're not doing the lights. Not doing the lights tonight. But welcome anyway. Took last night off. Spent some time with the kids when they got home. Didn't want to rush getting back into things. But I appreciate you guys being patient and giving me just some time from time to time. It's my show. I can do it whenever I want. But, I do feel some sort of attachment to you guys, to the point where I know you guys enjoy tuning in for the hour or so that we spend together. And I know that some of you look forward to it greatly. And that affects me deeply to think that people are spending get enough enjoyment out of what I've created to want to continue to come back in any capacity, but it's on a regular capacity, on a nightly capacity. That's pretty impactful. So there we go. And Nick Naylor, hi Jesus man. Well, the beard is getting there. The beard is getting there, and the hair is getting longer. I've got to get that stuff trimmed up, but not today. Not messing with it. After this, I'm going to chill out, and probably after this stream, I'm probably going to chill out and watch some hockey, or maybe I'll crash Blaine's Escape Corners YouTube stream and harass him that he's not covering Castlevania. He hasn't watched it yet, which is silly. But what we're talking about tonight is we're picking up where we left off. What happens to David after he kills Goliath? Now, we know that he eventually becomes king because King David, Star of David, we know about this. He is a cornerstone in the Jewish and Christian faiths because of the impact that he has and what he does before God. But how does he get from being the champion of Saul, kind of showing him up a little bit, the champion of Saul, to being king? He's not related to Saul. He's not, he's not in that line. He's just another guy. We know that he's supposed to be the next king because God instructed Samuel to anoint him. But we don't think that Saul knows that. And how is everybody else going to react to this? Because it appears that only a very few people actually know about David's anointment to be king. But we think that Saul's starting to suspect. And here is where a lot of David's life gets very interesting. I mean, not to say that killing a 10-foot tall dude in front of his army and your army with a single stone isn't, the male peak athletic form, but there's so much more that happens in between that instance and when he becomes king. And there's a lot of drama that happens in between, and it's very interesting. They won't, and they won't, and they shouldn't, because they wouldn't get it right. But it would be great to see somebody correctly put together a good representation of the life of David, from kind of similar to how they did Moses in the 10 Commandments. But that's old Hollywood, Charlton Heston era Hollywood, and as you've seen from other like Sodom and Gomorrah, they don't always get it right that way. But it would be a great production if somebody could put it together correctly. David's life has so much intrigue from beginning to end that it would be great. It would be a great miniseries. MR's in here too. MR, I know I've seen you comment. I know you've been trying to make it. I'm glad you have, dude. Glad you've been here. Are you in the Discord? I don't think you're in the Discord. Dude, MR, especially you. Follow the locals. Just subscribe to it. I don't want people supporting through there. That's not the issue. Just subscribe to the locals. Get in there. Follow the Discord link for the Discord and be in there. That way you don't have to comment on YouTube. You can just go to me. So, all right. Oh, but before we get into that, I want to share something. I was going to share with us the other day. There's a guy, and if I wasn't already very, very well established in my non-denominational faith, I would be looking very closely at the Lutheran faith, specifically because of this guy. He's come on the show before. He's got a great YouTube channel. I really recommend everybody go in there. It's Lutheran Satire. That's the name of the channel. He's a Lutheran pastor. He is hilarious, but he's got great takes on faith in general. He's written for the Federalist before. He's just he puts things well into perspective, I think, in a way that I enjoy. And I'm going to share about this because we've talked before about egalitarianism and its harm to Christianity. So I'm gonna read this up here a little bit. I'll read what he wrote. He put together through a thread. I unrolled it, told him I was going to share it on Facebook, which I haven't yet, but I'm going to talk about it here. Again, if you're on Twitter and you're looking for somebody who's got a very interesting take, you're also going to have to sift through his absolute his absolute tantrums that he has over the Indianapolis Colts. But he's got some great just Christian takes, and this was directed specifically at the Lutheran Church, the LCMS Lutheran Church. That's the Missouri Synod, but it really hits home for what a lot of churches, from the organized to the independents, are dealing with. It came up with a quote he was talking about. Well, here's the original tweet that he's replying to, but this is where he really gets into it. It doesn't take him long to figure out to tell you what it's all about. For some time, the LCMS has operated with a fundamentally flawed approach to the question of the service of women in the church. So he's saying LCMS, he's talking about the Lutheran, I think it's Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod. I could get this completely wrong. I'm not a Lutheran, and I'm sure that when I clip this and I tag him in it, he's gonna correct me. For some time, the LCMS has operated with a fundamentally flawed approach to the question of the service of women in the church. By and large, LCMS culture has adopted a worldly view of, quote, equality, end quote, which holds that women aren't equal if they can't do the same things men can. Oh, clicking on links. So we are Bible believers who recognize that Scripture clearly forbids women from exercising the pastoral office, but we are also worldview havers who wish that God hadn't said this because it's not fair. He's being a little tongue-in-cheek here, but he's being accurately like that. And we're all probably guilty of this at some point or the other. We read something in the Bible we don't like because it challenges how our opinion on things, and we kind of like, man, I wish that wasn't the case. Instead of doing the correct thing, probably, which is humbly saying, oh, I need to adjust myself because here's the truth. What God is providing, this is what the truth is. And I need to reorient myself so I'm more in line with this truth. The result is that for about 50 years now, we have been trying to maintain our faithfulness to the Scriptures while minimizing the embarrassment we feel from having a doctrine that makes women, quote, unequal, end quote, by opening up things to women that they haven't historically done. Great point on this. And again, this isn't just about egalitarianism with women or whatnot. It's Christian views and the faith and what the Bible says that we feel uncomfortable with because society has tried to shame us into not believing it, to shame us into feeling lesser for believing it, and definitely not wanting to share it with other people. And it's in some ways it's overt in shaming us, in other ways it's very insidious and insipid in just that social engineering that they do to make us ashamed of what God says when we should be proud. We should be shouting it from the rooftops. This is what we should do, to the point where we're annoying everybody that way. Our congregations used to not have women's suffrage, but then we said they could. See, we said women could be 50% equal. Oh, 50% isn't enough? Then women can be lay readers, making them 65% equal. Oh, that's still not enough? How about women elders and communion assistants? For many in the else, which is a big no-no. It's a big no-no, that last part. How about women elders and communion assistants? I need to bring him on. I need to get him back on here, just for one thing, to talk about sola fide. but more to talk, but maybe touch on this a little bit, because I really think this was a great thread by him. So for many in the LCMS, I quote, I do not permit a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man, end quote, means women can't wear a stole and preach a sermon, but they can do readings, because reading the word of God in order to teach people isn't teaching. That's what he did there. That is a common argument from egalitarians. And they can preach a children's sermon in front of the entire congregation, because that's not preaching. And they can hand communicants to and they can hand communicants the blood of the blood of Christ, and say the blood of Christ shed for you, and that's not teaching or authoritative. Likewise, the LCMS has another very bad habit of waiting for congregations to spend 30 years inviting women to do historically pastoral and male things before we have a debate about whether they're appropriate. Debate in quotes. Then when we, quote, debate and, quote, study these practices, even though there's approximately a 0% chance that we'll reach a conclusion that would require us to call 60% of our congregation to repentance. Another thing, we're running against hard truths, hard decisions, the hard right. Read a book about Operation Gothic Serpent from, I'm trying to remember the colonel on the ground, the colonel leading the Rangers in there. I'm trying to remember the character Tom Sizemore played, or the guy that Tom Sizemore played in Black Hawk Down. He wrote a book about this, the hard right decisions. They're tough, and they're especially tough in the moment. But making the hard right decision pays off in the end, because you did the right thing when it was hard and you stayed the course. Sometimes you have to call people to repentance. When we cover a lot of Paul's books, Paul's letters, there's a lot of calling people to repent for things that they've done. He's encouraging, he's talking to them as these early churches are getting started, but he's also pointing out what they need to fix. It doesn't matter whether you've been doing it for a week or 30 years, like Hans is saying. You got to stay on point. So on the one hand, that's been the culture of the LCMS for half a century. Then, on the other hand, you have the newly emerging small but vocal-based goblin subculture populated by angry dudes who are much more culture warriors than they are proper Lutherans. All right, now we're going to get started. We're going to take some shots at the at some of the alt-right on here, because if you see this, if you're really paying attention and being honest, you know that there are people out there that the biggest what they find most attractive about Christianity is not the fact that it's God and the truth, but the fact that it's countercultural to things that they don't like. And so they happen to share some alignment with that, instead of going, no, there's more to it than just a culture that is more correct and wholesome. That's something that I desire. And then they think it's cool, or it's edgy or whatever. We do have those folks on there. All right, so he's populated by angry dudes who are much more culture warriors than they are proper Lutherans. For them, the church and orthodoxy are not ends unto themselves, but useful tools for tearing down the world that feminism has built for them, a world where the deck is stacked against them, and that is profoundly destructive to men, to families, and societies. While these dudes are right about many things, their chief problem is that they are more interested in being based than Christians, and more interested in impressing their friends with snarky quips than they are in seeking truth and understanding the issues. I get what attracted you to Christianity, but how are you growing in Christianity versus how much are you just using it as a cudgel? Faith is not a cudgel. All of that brings us to the issue of women writing theology books. This is a rather broad category that requires a lot of distinctions. Is it okay for a woman to write a book about Jesus for kindergartners? Of course. Is it okay for women to write a "Here's why CFW Walther is wrong about law and gospel preaching for seminarians"? Obviously, no. Okay, so where's the line? That is a difficult question, and the answer depends on many other factors. How is the book written? Who is the audience? If a woman writes a book about her journey into Lutheranism, can she only describe the theological assertions that convinced her, or can she also assert those assertions? Where's the line between confessing and teaching? So for confessional Lutherans, I don't think there's any thoughtful answer to the question, quote, should women write theology books, unquote, other than it depends. It's a topic that is worthy of debate and discussion. We find the lines we shouldn't cross by talking about them. Very good. Very poignant, Hans, bringing that up. We don't just ignore it, kick the can down the road 30 years until we get to a point where we can't really address it. Likewise, the debate has to take into account the context of the women in the church issue, both the angry anti-feminist hammer seeing every issue as a feminist nail problem, and the half a century chipping away at the male-only priesthood in the LCMS problem. So those who are inclined to say women writing theology books is fine need to concede that the other side has a point when they say, hey, we've seen this whole have women start doing a new thing without any real discussion first movie before it, and it doesn't end well. Correct. I'm one of those people. Likewise, when the female theology book skeptical people raise their objections, the women writing theology books is fine crowd should recognize that they're only validating that skepticism by immediately accusing them of being misogynists who are intimidated by women. I really can't stress this enough. When you start talking like a feminist secularist, the moment someone suggests 1 Timothy 2 extends further than you want, it reinforces the idea that women writing theology books is just a Trojan horse for women's ordination. Bingo. And it happens so often. On the other hand, those who are uncomfortable with women writing theology books should remember that discomfort is a call to discuss and not a license to demonize. I haven't seen a ton of comments that were aimed at Molly. I don't know who Molly is. Molly is apparently, I don't know if it's Molly Hemingway, because I know that he knows her. I didn't research that back enough. I wasn't worried about so interested in that as I was in the fact that he's making very good points. I haven't seen a ton of comments that were aimed at Molly because I've blocked many a based goblin. But some comments I did see were as predictable as they were despicable. The rantings of boring, stupid children who think that God's word exists to give them edgelord ammo instead of peace with him and each other. Bingo. Bingo. And I've said it before. In many ways, I am way too inappropriate at times in the way I handle people who are incorrect in the faith, who are argumentative in the faith, who want to change things, who are just wrong. I don't argue that well about it with people. I don't do it in the best way. I don't do it in the way that is inviting, because so often I think that somebody's mind's already made up. I'm not really going to change their mind. I'm just there to tell them you're wrong, instead of doing it in a way that is telling them that they're wrong, but also inviting them to change their mind about it. I've struggled with that greatly. And someone is right to call me out about it. So those who think women should write books like Molly wrote should recognize that the other side does have a point when they note that much of the opposition is coming from rage goblins who have no ability to discern and interest in nothing other than labeling others as impure. This is a huge problem with the online Orthodox community, because a lot of times when you run into Ortho bros on social media, a lot of times, not all the time, there's some really good guys out there, but there's a lot of guys out there representing Orthodoxy. Don't even go to Orthodox church. They haven't officially been recognized as Orthodoxy. I think there's a whole process within the Orthodoxy of doing so, and but they just use it because it's because it's based, and they're attracted by the trappings behind it. Likewise, they should recognize that people drawing a different conclusion on the boundaries of 1 Timothy 2 doesn't necessarily mean they reject 1 Timothy 2, just as they should recognize that you can't find the lines together if you won't let people tell you where they think they are. In other words, stop lumping Molly's defenders in with Atlantic District pastors who invite women to preach and then tell everyone, no, that wasn't a sermon, that was a reflection. As for my position on the issue, I want to have the debate and find the lines. That's it. I want to discuss the issue with anyone. I'm sorry, hold on, I lost my spot. I want to discuss the issue with anyone who has meaningful thoughts to share and who can commit to not being as annoying and self-righteous as I was when I was 25. P.S. I haven't finished Molly's book yet, but Molly is my friend, and regardless of the lines and the debate and the whatnot, I encourage all the anime avatar accounts to leave their anonymity behind if they're going to hurl personal attacks on her. Well, you should always personal attacks. Look, free speech and everything, you're able to do it, but does it reflect well on you? No, unless there's certain things going on that are where, unless that personal stuff is part of the discussion, which is not. She wrote a book. Did she do the right thing or not? I don't know. I'm not following that. But Hans, I thought it was great. It's not something limited to the Lutheran Church. Baptists have that problem. Non-denominationals have that problem. Anglicans have that problem. It's across the spectrum, right? It's across the spectrum. And it's ruined many a congregation and many a denomination. And you only have to look at the Lutherans and see the ELCA Lutherans, which you hear me talk about a lot of the time when it comes to this particular issue. So I have all right, I've neglected the chat because I was reading that. So here we go. All right. Nernaeth start. If egalitarians were correct, then wouldn't people be equal in stature already and not need a hand up? There would have, if egalitarians were correct, there wouldn't have even been a distinction from God when Adam and Eve sinned. He would have said you are both going to suffer equally, and you are both going to bear equal responsibility on everything. The same, and it's not, and they don't. But again, it's the people don't understand it. It's the balance. It's the balance that God has created in this world. Sounds like Christian feminism to me. It is. As MR says, this makes sense. Is it because communion is a sacrament? That gets a little bit more into the rules that I'm familiar with. Again, when you tune in here, you're getting me, the layman. You're not getting me, the scholar. That's why I opened up with that. But it is a very serious thing, especially in Lutheran and more highly organized churches like that. Anglicans too. It used to be before COVID even. We didn't, as a non-denominational, we didn't have deacons were often passing out communion, but it wasn't limited to deacons. We had other folks help out. Just that's a small church thing. We don't have enough people to pass out communion and do it in a timely and efficient fashion. So we find men and be like, "Hey, would you like to hand out communion?" We would go out and we would do the pass out the crackers and then pass out the cups with the juice, and then afterwards we come around with the tithe plates. So that's where we're at with that. So, but we never had any women do it. I mean, that's a very dividing line, and that's just communion really just falls within that male category, it seems. Blaine, you did make it. And Mar said, I started that way originally. Once I found my way back, then I began to read the Bible. Excellent, MR. Renee, it's what happens when you get rid of proper shame. Yes, God accepts and forgives you, but there is no way he wanted you to be 25, single, and have 4 kids or have 6 baby mamas. Exactly. He doesn't. He wants what he has, right? What he has created for us. The infrastructure there to have what we would consider the nuclear family. Man at the top, women in support, with the kids learning from both. And everybody hears support. Not everybody. So many people hear support and think that is unimportant, less than honorable. It's not. And that's the big problem. That's the big problem with the feminists and the egalitarians. We're not equal until we can do the same things. That is not correct. We are built differently. We have different roles. There are different strengths and weaknesses, natural strengths and weaknesses that are given to men and women. So he continues, the exception proves the rule, but you have to constantly point out the missteps so people don't just see the blessed result. The contrast in what is and what should be is the lesson. Exactly. Porcupine said, I began looking outward from the LCMS for two reasons: shaming a member family for a father's suicide in the election of female presidents of the church body. Whoa, in LCMS? And I think that's what he's talking about. When that kind of stuff that's going on, first off, that's a poor congregational culture when we're talking about shaming a member family when the father commits suicide. Because one of the things the church doesn't do a really good job dealing with and outreach to. I think we could do a better job. We do I think there's a lot of Christian outreach for addiction issues, but for mental illness issues or stress things that cause men oftentimes to commit suicide, it's unfortunately, with the amount of stress and responsibility that's put on our shoulders, it's a big deal, right? And we don't do good outreach. We have problems enough shunning people with addiction issues. And that's, again, whenever you start pointing fingers instead of coming together and loving on people who have gone through a loss of a family member for something as heart-wrenching as suicide is, you're not in the greats. You were good to get out of that church, which I'm assuming you did. And then the election of the female president said that's already an issue, hotly contested. So, but yeah, Blaine, if you did it in the best way every time, I wouldn't believe you were honest. I don't know if I do it the best way anytime, but I do it. Where you're hearing it from is hearing it from me. I try, and it's from the heart. Now I try to couch it. I try to temper my speech more. Like I try to temper my speech more just to be a better witness, right? But the opinions are still the same, right? I would love to be off the rails talking about some of this stuff, but it wouldn't be appropriate, and it wouldn't do a good job making people who might have committed some of the sins I talk about or struggling with those things feel like there's a way back for them. You can make your beliefs so forceful to the point where somebody puts that on themselves to feel like there's no coming back from it. Abortion is an easy one to talk about. Infidelity, easy one to feel that way about. Drug addiction, easy one to feel that way about. And while I'm very clear in saying, don't let other people defend your salvation, I don't want to be a person who is a direct cause for someone else to leave, to walk away, unless it was true. A lot of times, I think when I'm talking to people, it's because they truly either don't believe and they don't want to believe, or they just don't want to come to terms with the fact that what they're doing is a sinful nature. Not when I see somebody honestly and openly saying, I'm struggling with this sin, I immediately want to go out there and help them. I don't want to be the one putting up roadblocks to them, because I'm the same way. I have things that I struggle with that from a day-to-day basis. My sarcasm and attitude and my anger are two of those things, right? And every time I let them get the better of me, then I feel like I've failed. I've failed God. It's another time where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, God. I'm making a commitment to stop. Don't. And I don't. So you shouldn't, and this is going back up to what I was talking about with Porcupine, you shouldn't be ostracizing people. There should be probably a closed door account, and it might be, and it's a tough one, especially in that particular issue. But with other issues and everything, we're closed door. We're like, look, we're counseling you. We want you to know, first and foremost, we love you. We think we want to help you get through this. We see the good in you. God sees the good in you better than anybody else can. but we also have to let's talk about and let's address these issues that have led to whatever, right? And then you have either somebody willing to discuss the problem and get better, or you have somebody unwilling, and then that's a case by case basis, and you got to play it the way the scripture says you need to play it. So, but yeah, and thanks, Blaine. I appreciate that. Blaine and I are on a harassment campaign against each other right now, for many different things. But that's because that's the rapport we've got now. MR said, "Me too. I kind of bludgeon people in arguments sometimes." Yeah, I mean, look, I know I'm not the only one, and I know it's easy to do online, but the problem with me, it's easy for me to do it in front of them. So welcome, Neo. Glad to have you here. Blaine says Episcopal has a ton of female clergy. Yeah, but the Episcopals are barely Christians at this point. Like they are so far out there. They are probably the worst side of the Anglican Church, which I didn't actually knew that they were a part of until recently. So, oh, Blaine, we know we're here for the lame man. No, you know what I meant. Let's bear false witness there. A lot of groups I went to getting sober were at churches. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The church, a lot of addiction programs are faith-based. I know I have a family member who is I have a family member who has dealt with I have a whole side of my family which has a lot of folks who have dealt with addictions in different forms. But I have one specifically with substance abuse where he finally got clean, found the woman who would tolerate him, which is great. Last time I saw him, he looked very good. I was very happy to see him in those straits. You got a woman that's supporting you, that gives you somebody to want to take on that responsibility. You'd be amazed how well that will help you in your improvement. That's why, look, God gave Eve to Adam for a reason, right? Paired us up for a reason. But yeah, and he's going to church now. And there's a trip, and I've been trying to get him to go to church for a while, but my church was far away from where he lived. It was hard, and plus he was dealing. He would rather be at home with his addictions. So, the nicest people I know were screw ups and outcasts, even more than born and raised church people. No exceptions. I'd call them for help before my church. Okay, so. Man, this is gonna be a long episode. This is one of those nights where I say it's gonna be a short stream and turns into a super long stream because we haven't even gotten to our reading yet. This is a great story. All right, so before I joined my church, I had left a toxic church, and a friend of mine, who I'd known, one of my few friends in high school, I had two friends in high school. One of my friends in high school said, "Hey, why don't you come to this study group with me?" And so I did, and immediately felt a change in things. I was still on I don't need church anymore. I got my relationship with God. I believe in what the Bible, I had all that. I had the faith, but I didn't think I needed church. But I immediately got into the small group, and I immediately felt a change in the culture from the toxic culture that was going on at my old church, and this group of folks who are the same age and kind of going through the same thing. There was a guy there who was going through worse things than I was. And his behavior and his decisions in life were questionable and toxic. And it all came to a head because he was very good friends with the guy who was very close friends with the guy who was running the small group. And there was a huge argument. It was over something I had said that was pretty innocuous, but it had set him off and stormed out. It's the last time I saw him. Went overseas, did my thing, stayed away from church. I was out of the area, so I wasn't going to the small group anymore. Fast forward, I'm coming back home, moving back into my hometown, And I reach out to the gentleman running the old small group, and he says, and I said, hey, are you still going to church at X? He said, yeah. So I start going there. Well, the other guy was going to church there too, still going to church there too. So I talked to, and so I was initially nervous because the last time I'd seen him, it was bad. But he had really turned a corner. He had a kid, very close in age to my son, very close in age. In fact, they're on the same soccer team right now. But listen, he had just turned a corner, and you listen to him talk in Sunday school and about how much God's word and guidance had affected him when he put it into practice and his new outlook. He is one of the best ambassadors locally I could point to for Christ. I had a wild past where I did a lot of bad things, and I'm not proud of it, but here's where I am today. And he doesn't want to, he's at that thing where he doesn't want to be, don't think he wants to be that guy, and I don't think he recognizes it, how far he has come. And he says things. To me, he's one of my favorite people to listen to in Sunday school. He says things that deeply impact me. And again, he went from being a very fiery guy, an affable guy a lot of times, but very standoffish in other times, to being just like Nernath is describing, one of the nicest people you'll know. One of the nicest people you know. And I'm glad that I got to know him. And I'm glad that I got to see that. I'm glad I got to know the him before the him I know now. So, and MR says, no, me too. My best friends are the ones I bludgeon. Huge flaw. It happens, MR. It is a constant work. And sometimes you need that. And I don't know if you're married or not or whatnot. But you want your wife to hold you accountable. You want your friends and family to hold you accountable. You need somebody behind you go, hey, knock that off. And you have to have the awareness enough when you're spooling up or spiraling, like I like to describe it. You have to have at least the awareness to go, all right, I think I'm right, and I think that I need to do what I'm doing right now, but I'm going to trust this person that they're seeing something that I'm in me that I need to slow down. They need to be. We all need a friend or a spouse who is willing to do that. I happen to have both. Got a great girlfriend. If she's helping keep you in check, that's good. That's good. Glad to hear that, MR, by the way. All right. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, 45 minutes later, let's get into what we talked about, what tonight's Bible reading is going to be. I'm glad I could offer it, MR. Glad I'm old enough to offer that to people. Oh, wait. Stop screen. Present. Share screen. Wait, I don't want spoilers. Let's go back a chapter before I share. All right. This could be a little long, but I can read it right through because this reads very well. This is good narrative, meaning it's easy to get through. Where is it? There we go. All right, chapter 18, Saul's growing fear of David. After David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return home to his family. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. All right, stop right here. There's a lot of weirdos out there that try to make the friendship of Jonathan and David to be homosexual. It's not. There's nothing in here that implies that. It's the same thing. Tolkien fans know what I'm talking about. They try to do with Frodo and Sam and Merry and Pippin. If you have a friendship, I didn't really have much of growing up, but I had it in the army. I have it now. Um, when you have a friendship which is close and deeply emotional, it's not the same as a romantic entanglement or anything. This is not anything sexual in nature. It's stupid to think of it that way. I think a lot of people do get those things confused. But it's not. You can have a close, very brotherly relationship with a guy that you just similar interests, your personalities mesh well, and you have a great friendship with somebody. There you go. This is what happened. And those, a lot of us run into those, right? And many people that you talk to can think of a person of the same gender who they have a very close friendship, a confidant, somebody that they can always talk to. People who have been friends with somebody since childhood, a childhood friend that you're still friends with. You've been through so many things together. Doesn't mean you're sword fighting. But, you know, we're seeing the lines starting to blur her here politically, right? So David's a champion. He's made Saul look kind of bad, kind of showed him up, but also kind of helped Saul because look, he got rid of this this Philistine issue, right? He killed Goliath, and so now this whole thing is ended. He's popular. He's good to keep around him. So Saul keeps him close. And look, David's a warrior at heart. And seems like it's just a genuinely affable dude. Jonathan, by all accounts, is a very similar person. Of course, they're going to be friends. And when you're somebody who is the son of a king, you're probably it's probably difficult to find somebody who is willing to approach you in a deep friendship way. So it's good. They're peers. Blaine says, to be frank, there are a lot of people with desire for someone who just wants to be friends. The confusion comes from self-inserts. And outside forces telling you that if sword fight Ricada, I'm not that. Look, I know I consider Nick a friend, but we're not deep confidants or anything. Look, I'm just happy when he responds to my messages. But he's a good dude. He's a good dude. All right. So Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. Whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers as well. There we go. When the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs, with timbrels and lyres. As they danced, they sang, Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. Great, a very famous quote here from the Bible. Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. Like I said, Saul was made to look a little foolish by this whole thing. Now, is it his fault that the Philistines had a big dude that's kind of intimidating? No. Is it his fault that he wasn't being faithful in God and just going out there the way that David did? Maybe he could have done that. Maybe he could have done what David did. He didn't. He let the other side control things. It made him look bad. It made David look good. They still like Saul. David looks a little bit better though. Blaine said, I've seen enough anime to know that the childhood friends never wins. Blaine, I've seen enough anime to know that anime does not always reflect real life. Blaine says, everyone sword fights Racket's nose when he turns around. You know, and everybody loses. Is it regional that you say leers when I always heard liars? I've never heard it called a liar. I've always heard it called a leer. Maybe somebody says lires. Let's ask Nernaeth, since he wants to be the enunciation and pronunciation police, calling you out, Nernaeth. Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. It probably didn't make him feel good. It's not. Who's a liar? It's not called a liar. Hold on. I'm going to do some research on this. And by doing some research, I mean I'm not going to be doing anything of the sort. Lear is weird. It's that. Why would you rather it be reflect somebody who is being dishonest, sound like that, or sound like somebody who's staring at something? It's a leer. This isn't no, and this isn't like when Nick does the and I can't butcher. Yeah, what does he say? Instead of yeoman, it's yeoman. I think he stopped doing it, but man, now I got to do it. All right, well I disagree with Google. I don't respect the Greek. Have you seen the Greeks recently? There's nothing to respect about them. It's a leer. As they danced, they sang. Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but with me only thousands. Here's the thing. David only killed one guy. The jets are cool. But that's a Lear, I think. That's a Learjet, I think. Anyway, they have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. Not in a good way, in a paranoid way. This is not good. Saul is a deeply jealous man, right? And how much more jealous is he going to be that he can't get taxes from the family? He has made him commander of his armies, and he's also had to give one of his daughters to him in marriage. I don't know if they've done that yet. Anyway, that was part of the agreement, though. The Greek motto during World War II was freedom or death, and they were the first troops to stymie the Wehrmacht. That was then. This is now. Nunath, are you Greek? I get the feeling that this is deeply personal. All right. But what more can he get but the kingdom? So now he's already paranoid there. The next day, an evil spirit from God came forcefully on Saul. He was prophesying in his house while David was playing the lyre, as he usually did. Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it, saying to himself, I'll pin David to the wall. But David eluded him twice. Oh, Nernath, I didn't hear that. Well, is Greek's European, right? Greek's still in Europe. Continentally, that's Europe, right? It's not it's not Asia. Anyway, we're getting past the point that he's playing the lyre as he usually does, and Saul threw a spear at him. He's sitting over here acting like a charismatic, acting like a the Pentecostal, prophesying around the house, and then he goes, "Nope, gotcha," and he missed twice. Now, I don't know what David's thinking, right? I don't know what David's thinking. This guy just threw a spear at me twice. Blaine, I am a long way. I was right. I said it's Europe. I'm a long way removed from things that don't matter to me, like knowing exactly what continent Greece is at or how other people incorrectly pronounce Lear. And Saul is throwing spears at people. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with David, but had departed from Saul. So he sent David away from him and gave him to command over 1,000 men. And David led the troops in their campaigns. In everything he did, he had great success because the Lord was with him. Because David says great things, he shows great faith. Of course, God's going to be with him. Not only did he pick him as his champion, but look, David has got the Spirit of God in him. He is very, very faithful. And he's, like I said, we just read Tuesday night's reading from the chapter of David and Goliath. David is just on point, right? Who doesn't? Who can't love a guy like that? And everything he did, he had great success because the Lord was with him. When Saul saw how successful he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he led them in their campaigns. Everybody loves a winner. Saul said to David, Here's my oldest daughter, Merab. I will give her to you in marriage. Only serve me bravely and fight the battles of the Lord. For Saul said to himself, I will not raise a hand against him. Let the Philistines do that. No, David might actually take a bad lesson away from this, but here's Saul. No. I'm just going to do the easy thing to get rid of a hero is just keep throwing him at battles. Eventually, somebody's going to get him. This is stupid for Saul on two reasons. Yes, I get that can happen generally, not with God's chosen guy, right? Which David is at this point. You think God's going to let anything happen to him? No, man. He's not going to catch a stray arrow. He's not going to get disemboweled by some lucky peasant with a pitchfork. Talking about Witcher. But there you go. But David said to Saul, Who am I, and what is my family or my clan in Israel that I should become the king's son-in-law? So when the time came for Merab, Saul's daughter, to be given to David, she was given in marriage to Adriel of Meholah. Sounds like it's from Hawaii. Now Saul's daughter, Michal, I think it's Michal, was in love with David. All right. Quick fact about Michal. She's the very first Baptist. We'll get into that joke later, but it's not part of this story now. Saul's daughter Michal was in love with David, and when they told Saul about it, he was pleased. I will give her to him, he thought, so that she may be a snare to him, and so that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. So Saul said to David, Now you have a second opportunity to become my son-in-law. Then Saul ordered his attendants, Speak to David privately and say, Look, the king likes you. His attendants all love you. Now become his son-in-law. They repeated these words to David, but David said, Do you think it is a small matter to become the king's son-in-law? I am only a poor man and little known. Little known. Might be laying this humility on a little thick, but if it's legitimate, you know who David probably is very similar to? Is Tim Tebow. Very similar in personality too. Very big, so much in the faith that you almost think it's a put on. We're currently doing a study in our Sunday school that Tim Tebow is narrating through, and it's very good. He is almost childlike in his devotion to God, which, say what you want about him, and maybe it is all an act, but I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen where it's an act yet. So I've got to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, dude, this man just loves God. And Mark Geralt, nice. big Witcher fan here. Nerneas, it sounds like Saul was trying to snub David publicly with this stunt. Maybe. If you announce that your princess is marrying some guy, then call it off, you can draw your own assumptions. Yeah. Or maybe it makes Saul look, maybe Saul ends up looking again like the fool because David's popular. Maybe that was Saul's intent, but might have backfired on him because word gets out that David was the one who didn't want to marry, then it makes Saul look, well, what's wrong with and going on with Saul's family? When Saul's servants told him what David said, Saul replied, "Say to David, the king wants no other price for the bride than 100 Philistine foreskins to take revenge on his enemies." Saul's plan was to have David fall by the hands of the Philistines. Okay, first off, I'm going to be like, Saul, that's weird. That's weird. I don't want to be putting my hands on somebody's dongle, cutting off their foreskin. If it is an act and people come to God, then awesome. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'd hate that for him, but like I said, it's amazing. And I was a big skeptic of him from jump. All right, Saul's plan was to have David fall by the hands of the Philistines. When the attendants told David these things, he was pleased to become the king's son-in-law. So before the allotted time elapsed, David took his men with him and went out and killed 200 Philistines and brought back their foreskins. Just take the ears. Why do y'all have to be weird about this? Leave the man's junk alone. God spoke with an ass. He'll do it if he needs to. Oh, yeah. So he brought back their foreskins. They counted out the full number to the king so that David might become the king's son-in-law. Then son gave him his daughter Michal in marriage. Okay. Imagine being in the throne room. 1, and you drop it in a pan or something like that. 2, 3. Nico, it's okay. You can go back and catch the previous hour, but there was a the previous hour was mostly dedicated to something other than our reading tonight, actually. We were about 45 minutes in. Anyway, but welcome to the program, Nico. I'm glad you've made it. Blaine said proves it was a dude and that they weren't Jewish. Good call. I said good call. Just as MR's chat popped up. Good call. Amen. It's right there. Prove it was a dude. They weren't Jewish. True. It's still weird. When Saul realized that the Lord was with David and his daughter Michal loved David, Saul became still more afraid of him, and he remained his enemy the rest of his days. This is the sad thing right here. This is the sad thing about Saul. All right. Saul has done nothing but create goodwill between him and David. And if the Lord is with David, it should be great. It's a good idea to try to be with David as well. It would have helped Saul possibly get back into God's good graces. Maybe it costs him his kingdom. Maybe it costs him his crown. But what's more important? Your temporary crown here on earth and all the trappings of being the king, and maybe the avoiding the humiliation of losing that crown to somebody else who came from nothing, or doing what God wants. And this in some ways, this ties into what we were reading from Hans, the difficult decisions. when you realize that you're in error? Are you going to double down and just keep doing it and just do what Saul does and go, nope, I'm already doing it. I'm already on the downside. I'm just going to keep being me instead of going, I got to change that I got to make. And Saul's in a perfect position to change his fortunes. David's loyal to him, it seems. Well, David has acted honorably with him. He is his father-in-law now, right? His son is best friends with David. All he has to do is just bring him in. And instead, he is threatened by him and paranoid of him because he knows that God is on his side and that the Lord has left Saul. It's because Saul can't make a right decision. Power has corrupted Saul, and Saul's not the first wasn't the first to do this to happen to, and he ain't going to be the last. We know this. We've got a Congress and White House historically riddled with them. Compromised people for power and attention and money. And he remained his enemy the rest of his days. The Philistine commanders continued to go out to battle, and as often as they did, David met with more success than the rest of Saul's officers, and his name became well known. Like it wasn't already. Nick Naylor says, I feel like they could have fudged those numbers pretty easy, but just taking like any other skin, maybe. Imagine, like I said, imagine being the royal. My hat's all jacked up. Imagine being the royal foreskin counter in this thing. Again, you got to reach in the bag or sack or whatever they've brought it in, and you got to inspect it. Like, yeah, this looks like this looks like it came off a penis. Yeah, faux skins. Stop. Blaine, with actually a very good point, foreskin was easily identified by the Levites because they are the ones who did it. They took them off, right? Neo, have a good rest of your evening. And then Blaine, no faux skins getting past their check. Look, I've been around for a while. I know penis when I see it. The man has seen a lot of dick. Stop it. I've been told. Never mind. I'm not going to get into this. Plain. I'm not going to get into this. We can talk about that offline, or maybe we'll talk about it on maybe your stream or something. I don't know. It's off topic right now. We're already off topic. The greatest. I'm sorry. One of my favorite Nick Rekieta rants is when people were talking to him about circumcision, and he had finally had enough of it, and he just goes off, and he's pissed because somebody brought up his kids, and he was just not having it. It's none of your damn business. Nick says use the black ones as wristbands. This is terrible. Oh, man. All right. Saul tries to kill David. Should be in parentheses again, because we've already seen him try to do it by throwing a spear at him twice. Which, dude, I get it. Maybe you don't have the best aim, but man, whatever. Oh, also, it's throwing him in the battle after battle, trying to get him killed that way. Saul told his son Jonathan and all the attendants to kill David. But Jonathan had taken, which is stupid, Saul. But Jonathan had taken a great liking to David and warned him, "My father Saul is looking for a chance to kill you. Be on your guard tomorrow morning. Go into hiding and stay there. I will go out and stand with my father in the field where you are, and I'll speak to him about you and will tell you what I find out." Yeah. So Saul at this point has become insane with paranoia to the point where he wants his son to just kill him, right? He goes, "You need to show your loyalty to me, I guess, and kill this man." Have you seen this SNL Cadillac ad with "Ride So Gentle," the Jewish priest snipping a baby in the back seat? No, I think I have I just can't readily recall it. Is that back when SNL was still funny? Because it sounds like it. Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul, his father, and said to him, "Let not the king do wrong to his servant David. He has not wronged you. And what has he done what he has done has benefited you greatly. He took his life in his hands when he killed the Philistine. The Lord won a great victory for all Israel, and you saw it and were glad. Why then would you do wrong to an innocent man by David by killing him for no reason?" Saul listened to Jonathan and took this oath: "As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be put to death." Ooh, Saul. Saul. Not good, man. He is taking that oath, and you know you're not going to keep it. So Jonathan called David and told him the whole conversation. He brought him to Saul, and David was with Saul as before. Once more, war broke out, and David went out and fought the Philistines. He struck them with such force that they fled before him. But an evil spirit from the Lord came on Saul as he was sitting in his house with his spear in his hand. Because, look, if I was a king, I'd stand around with the spear in my hand too. But he's doing this. Seems a little weird. While David was playing the lyre, Saul tried to pin him to the wall with his spear, but David eluded him as Saul drove the spear into the wall. Okay, this one sounds like he wasn't throwing it. He actually charged him with the spear. And that night, David made good his escape. Saul sent men to David's house to watch it and to kill him in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, warned him, "If you don't run for your life tonight, tomorrow you will be killed." So Michal let David down through a window, and he fled and escaped. Then Michal took an idol and laid it on the bed, covering it with a garment and putting some goat's hair at the head. Wonder what the idol means. I think that's I don't know. We'll see. When Saul sent the men to capture David, Michal said, "He is ill." Then Saul sent the men back to see David and told them, "Bring him up to me in his bed so that I may kill him." But when the men entered, there was the idol in the bed, and the head was with some goat's hair. Saul said to Michal, "Why did you deceive me like this and send my enemy away so that he escaped?" Michal told him, "He said to me, 'Let me get away. Why should I kill you?'" When David had fled and made his escape, and I don't know what that means. I don't understand her reply there. When David had fled and made his escape, he went to Samuel at Ramah and told him all that Saul had done to him. Then he and Samuel went to Naioth and stayed there. Word came to Saul, "David is in Naioth at Ramah." So he sent men to capture him. But when they saw a group of prophets prophesying with Samuel standing there as their leader, the Spirit of God came on Saul's men, and they also prophesied. Saul was told about it, and he sent more men, and they prophesied too. Saul sent men a third time, and they also prophesied. This sounds familiar. Finally, he himself left for Ramah and went to the great cistern at Seku. Then he asked, "Where are Samuel and David?" "Over in Naioth at Ramah," they said. So Saul went to Naioth at Ramah, but the Spirit of God came even on him, and he walked along prophesying until he came to Naioth. He stripped off his garments, and he too prophesied in Saul's presence. In Samuel's presence. He lay naked all that day and all that night. This is why people say, is Saul also among the prophets? Depends on what Saul said. If he's prophesying, he's prophesying. I don't know if that makes you a prophet, though. Blaine said Bill Murray days. So yes, that was funny. SNL will stop being funny not long after the 2000 election. The 2000 election was like the last gasp of good comedy out of SNL. So good. Blaine's escape corner. I want more of the side story here. They came for war again. So anyway, what, like the dude, treat it like the meme from of Grand Tour. Anyways, we'll see. But there we go. That's where we're in. So Saul so David's entered Saul's service. He's become best friends with Saul's son. He's become the husband to Saul's second daughter, and he has become beloved by the entirety of the Israelite nation. He has become a mighty warrior, and he is still serving faithfully to Saul's court. And Saul has taken over, has been overcome with rage, paranoia, and what have you with him. And there you go. So Blaine, I think just the side story there is, dude, the Philistines always think that I don't know. Philistines always want to fight. Philistines always start in trouble. But they're not always going to be the baddest guys in the story, right? And we'll find that out find out more about that later. So this is where we'll end up. And tomorrow's Friday, so Friday's a chill stream. And yeah, so we'll pick up more on this next week. And there we go. Blaine, you're more than welcome to come on the show for that if you want. Just let me know. But there we go. All right, so guys, I try to remember this. I don't try to sell or promote or do a whole lot of that stuff with this. I just sit here and want to talk and goof off with you guys. But again, subscribe if you want to, share this if you want to, join the locals, join the Discord. Do that. I'm not asking for you to support me in any way financially. I don't need it. That's not the purpose behind this. But if you want to talk about things in a more private setting, if you want to ask questions or have ideas for the show, that's the place to be. That's the place to be. And I'm getting a little bit more ticked off every day about what I see YouTube doing. And we've got some recent CDC rulings. I have some very strong opinions on. And who knows what's going to happen about it. Go on with that. But it's the same way. Look, and I said this with Legal Mindsets. And Legal Mindset says a lot of things I agree with, but he also has a lot of I don't think he's a man of faith. I don't think so. I don't watch his channel hardly. Only time I see him is when he's on Law Splaining, and says a lot of things I agree with. Says a few things I disagree with. That's not the point there. The point is, it's another channel that's outspoken against what the corporate or what the right. He's carrying that banner of what the wrong think is, and YouTube is no problem with banning him. And if they have that opinion, and if they take that stance against bigger channels, where does that leave smaller channels like myself or Blaine's or something like that? If somehow we have an opinion, that's different from where he was. John Smoth, there he goes. He's not a Christian. He thinks the Bible's fake stories, but wants training to be a minister. That's the name. That's the name of. You laughing at me about it? That is lost planning. Nick Show lost planning. That's the name of it. That's why and I need to get with Blaine on there. So, and look, like I said, it's just that eventually I would be happy to move my my community over to Rumble, but I don't know how it will be. But I also have to reconcile the fact that the purpose behind this is not just, us goofing off and having a good time talking about God and everything. It's outreach to people to come on here and see that, see what we're all about. Not just me and not just what I talk about, but the things that you guys talk about, the wealth of information that some of you in the chat have, the honest questions and the stories that come from a lot of you folks. And I think that's I think that if people see that, it's great. But what do I lack mostly is exposure. So there you go. I've set live streams before. I've made live streams before. Like I said, I stopped around the same time Nick came on the show. I was live streaming on Rumble. I was going through StreamYards. I've live stream on Facebook, on my Facebook page, because there's a Flawed Man Facebook page. I do it on my personal Facebook page. I do it on Twitter. I do it on, and I do it on YouTube, and I was also doing it on Rumble, but I was getting nowhere on Rumble. I was getting nothing out of Rumble, and it's not easy, at least on StreamYards, to set everything up with Rumble. You got to do things a whole lot differently, and so I did not want to deal with it. So, so as I said, me and Blaine, I'm going to have to find some time in the somewhat near or distant future to sit down with Blaine, probably on a weekend or something, or take a day off from streaming and sit down with Blaine and develop my channel a little bit more. Maybe switch off, leave StreamYards and move to something else that's more conducive to it. But when I was streaming on Rumble, I wasn't getting everywhere. So no, I've got family coming in, Blaine. This weekend's not going to be great, and I got to tear down. I've got a pool I got to tear down in the next few weeks too. So it's going to be. We'll figure some time out, Blaine. I know you're good for it, so it'll just come down to coordination. It's not. I'm just coming up, and let me do this here. I guess while I'm on the air with you guys. Let's go all the way to the end. I've had this channel over a year. That's pretty amazing. I thought I started it. I guess I did it right before I went on vacation last year. In July 5th, 2021, I made my first video. Does God exist? Why you should think so. Episode 0. I know what it was. I was making a lot of these. I made a lot. That was an unlisted video. Okay. And then Does God exist? Why should I believe in God? I published that on September 28th. When did I? October 1st is when I started going public, but I didn't start live streaming for a way. But that's when I started making videos public. Back on October 1st. So I've been doing this about a year. It's been great, and so there you go. There you go. And you guys have made it infinitely more better when it was just Fig's a great guy to talk to. He was great to have on in the chat most of the times after I brought Eric on. It was pretty much nobody other than that. I could get it. I saw that I was getting a few views, but nobody really in the chat. But having an active chat doesn't have to be. In fact, I prefer it smaller because it's easier to read what everybody's saying. An active chat with guys who tune in regularly and have something to say and are involved in this has been great for me. And like I said at the beginning of this program, humbling for me. So I love that you guys tune in and you guys have found this place somewhat have whatever enough value to spend your time interacting with it or just listening to it. Because I know there's some of you guys like John and Dresden who are more on the listening side of things, or Porcupine who's listening to this while he does his bus refinish. It's great. I'm glad that there is an impact, even if it's small. So anyway, so MR, you think I do well on Rumble? If Rumble's starting to pick up, maybe it's worth picking out again. But I need to reset. I need to back up and maybe reset some things on the back end. I don't want to change anything on. I don't want to change anything content wise, but like some of the behind the scenes stuff, yeah, I think is really in need of an update. So need a Nick shout out to get your Rumble up to 100 subs, then you can live stream. Yeah, I should probably just send him a super chat or something, or whatever the locals equivalent is. So moving is easier in the double digits than the triples, just like being single versus married. Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, but I would have, but to me, it's just, I should just be trying to get the word out however possible. So even though I don't like YouTube, even though I'd like to leave YouTube, at the same time, YouTube is still the biggest guy in the game. If people are on YouTube looking for God stuff, I would like to pop up there. I would like to be somebody they could find. So. And yeah, I have zero. I don't either. But yeah, we'll that's a down the road thing. We're not there yet. So, all right. John Smoth says, thanks for noticing me. Hey, man. Thanks for noticing me. So to John, Blaine, or Nath, and Mark, glad you got on here, Mar. I know you've been trying to make it. It's always good having you in the chat. Nico, smiling away. Nick Naylor, Neo, who's gone, who left left a little while ago. Anybody else? Oh, Porcupine was here at the beginning. It's a really active chat tonight, guys. That was great. Dresden. Yeah, that's right. Dresden was here. All you guys. Love you guys. Glad you got into this show. I like this. This was a stream that I'm gonna look back. I'm already looking back on and said this one went well. There was a lot of good things, a lot of good content in here, and a lot of good interaction from you guys. So you guys have a very good evening. Talk tomorrow night, probably, with the chill stream. So think of things you want to talk about, and I'll discuss it. It's whatever. In the meantime, guys, have a good night and God bless.